Okay, so let's continue our next video in our practice question series of AWS Certified Developer Associate exam. So let's read question number 51. A developer is working on a serverless project based in Java. Okay, so initial testing shows a cold start takes about 8 seconds on an average of AWS Lambda function. So you could see developer is working on serverless. So serverless means like any serverless, but here it is mentioned Lambda. So their project is running uh, as a Lambda function and it is written in Java. But it is mentioned when they like did some testing on the Lambda function, it looks just for the cold start, it took 8 seconds. What should the developer do to reduce the cold start time? So cold start is basically before actually executing your code, Lambda function needs to be like started. So what should you can do? One thing is add the Spring framework to your project and enable dependency injection. Wrong. You like Spring framework anyhow. Like if you know the Java, you know maybe Spring framework is little heavy. If you are going to put more heavy module in your code, the more time it is going to take a start. So A is wrong. And anyhow, like even you should know. Even let's suppose you don't know about the Spring framework. uh, Still, like, why should you change your application code? Like, why can't you just do some kind of settings? So A is wrong. Reduce the deployment package by introducing only needed modules. That is correct, because there might be some unnecessary modules which we have imported in Lambda function. So whenever we trigger the Lambda, so first all the modules were imported, and it makes the function ready to execute. So that is a cold start. So if we reduce those number of packages, then we can like fix this problem. We can reduce the cold start time. So B can be the answer. We need to choose to increase the memory allocation time. Okay, so in the Lambda, because Lambda is serverless, so you can't control the CPU. But if you increase the memory, which you can control, if you can increase the memory, correspondingly CPU will be increased. If CPU will be increased, the execution time might be lower, because the processing, you are increasing the processor capacity. So B and C can be the answer. Increase the timeout. So timeout is not an issue, because here it is the uh, like they are talking about the cold start of the Lambda, not like Lambda is getting timeout. No, D is wrong. Change the Lambda invocation type from synchronous to asynchronous. Wrong. So B and C will be the correct answer. Question number 52. A company uses an e-commerce website that uses DynamoDB, where pricing for items is dynamically updated in real time. So there is some website, and from website some price of items are getting updated in DynamoDB. At any given time, multiple updates may occur simultaneously for pricing information on a particular product. So maybe at a given time, let's suppose there is a one product P1. All right, so that is in the DynamoDB table, but multiple updates come at a time. So let's suppose one update. Let's suppose in existing DynamoDB product price is 100. So multiple updates coming. First update says make the price 100 to 200. Second says 100 to 150. Third says 100 to 120. Fourth says 100 to 180. Fifth says 100 to 160. So which one is going to be reflect? All right. This is causing the original editor change to be overwritten, because uh, one update says 100 to 200, but similarly at the same time someone also executed the same update and they changed to 100 to 120. And so it means the person who executed the transaction by for change to 100 to 200, that is getting overwritten, right, without review the process. So how should you can prevent this overwriting? So you can prevent what is the option? Concurrent writes, no. Conditional writes, so answer yes. So you can do the conditional writes. Conditional write means they will check the condition first. So as an example, when you are updating, you are passing product, like you need to update the product price to 200. If the product price is 100, only then do the update. right? So let's suppose if first transaction come and initially the product price is 100, so that will be successful. Now it will become 200. Now the second transaction come at the same time, but the first one already executed. So because the second transaction also has the conditional right, it has some condition. Okay, if the product price is 100, then update to 150. But now second transaction is not going to fail or maybe not able to execute because now the product price is 100, so that condition is going to fail. So it means whatever the changes has been done with the earlier transaction, that were not overwritten, so you can do the conditional rights. So answer is B. Question number 53. A developer is storing JSON file in Amazon S3 bucket. Okay. Developer wants to securely share a object with specific group of people. So some object in S3 bucket and you want to share that particular object. So not the whole S3, but just that object. How can developer securely provide temporary X? And that should be temporary X. A set object retention to the files. Use the SDK to restore the object before subsequent request. Wrong. Use SDK to generate a pre-signed URL. That is correct. Pre-signed URLs we can generate for a particular object, and that has inbuilt a token. Even if your public is sorry, even if your bucket is private, so that has a some token, and if you share that URL, that some time limit as well. So after some time, that URL is going to be expired, you can't access, but for the time being you can access. So B will be the correct answer. Set a bucket policy, no. Configure hosting website, no. So B will be the correct answer. A front-end web application is using Amazon Cognito user pool to handle user authentication. So there is a website front end, and Amazon Cognito is a is the AWS service which is used for authentication. And Cognito has a user pool. User pool means where you have mentioned okay the list of users who can access that particular website. So the front end application is using this security mechanism. You can say a developer is integrating DynamoDB into the application using the AWS SDK. Okay. How would the developer securely call the API without exposing the access or secret keys? So how can the developer so this application wants to call the DynamoDB, and if you want to, because this is a front end application, if using some application, if you want to call AWS services, either you have the IAM role, or either you can hard code some kind of credential. All right. So, but how you can access without exposing the access or secret key? Configure Amazon Cognito identity pools and exchange the JWT for temporary credential. That is correct. Uh, Cognito, in the Amazon Cognito, we have two services. One is user pool, one is identity pools. So using the identity pools, you can authorize some AWS services, because that is going to give you the temporary credential. Because web application already come to the Amazon Cognito. Cognito has the user pool. Now from here, because Cognito is also one of the AWS services, so they will give you and if we configure identity pools, so it will give you temporary credential or JWT token to access the DynamoDB, but without exposing your access to secret keys. Run the application on EC2, wrong. Hard code the credential, totally wrong. Use Amazon Cognito user pool JWT need token to access the DynamoDB, wrong. This JWT token should be the part of the identity pools, not the user pool. So A is the correct answer. A developer must build an application that uses Amazon DynamoDB. Okay. The requirement state that item is being stored in the DynamoDB table will be 7 KB in size. Okay. So from one application, you are storing some item into DynamoDB, and whatever the item is going to store into DynamoDB is of 7 KB. And that read must be strongly consistent. Okay. The maximum read rate is 3 items per second and maximum write rate is 10 items per second. How should the DynamoDB, how should the developer size the DynamoDB? Because when you configure your DynamoDB table or when you create DynamoDB table, now, you can specify RCU or WCU. RCU means read capacity unit and WCU means write capacity unit. Alright. So now you have this figure like 7 KB, 3 items per second, 10 items per second. What should based upon these scenarios, how should, because like you have to make sure you should not give more capacity to save the cost. You also have to make sure you should not give the less capacity, otherwise you are not even able to read properly, right? So you have to give the exact capacity. So how you are going to calculate? So you have the 7 KB inside, and let's see the write first. Write is 10 items per second. So one item is of 7 KB, right? So 10 items of 70 KB, right? 70 KB item. So total is 70 KB. That is right. And in 1 second, you can read 1 KB data. So 70 KB means 70 write capacity unit we need. Let's see the other. Now we have 7 KB in size and 3 items per second. All right, and here it is strongly consistent. So there are two type of settings. One is strongly consistent and one is eventually consistent. So let me show you. I think I already covered this in one of the video, but let me show you again. So if I found, see, strongly consistent and eventually consistent. If we read after some time of writing, we will get the correct data. Then set consistent read parameter to be true. Eventually consistent means if we just read after a write, it is possible that you will get some, because how this going to work, because application is going to write to the major DynamoDB table. A major DynamoDB table has some replication because it is a serverless, and it is going to replicate to some many server. So when you are going to read, maybe let's suppose the read is from this server, but when you trying to read from this server, it's not even being replicated to this server, right? Or maybe you are going to read from this server, server 3, but it's not even going to replicate, because replication also will take some couple of seconds, right? But before that you already perform the read operation. So if you immediately read, once you write, immediately read, so that is the eventually consistent. If you read just after write, then there will be chances you will not get the proper data. But if you wait for some time and then so if you write, then wait for some time, then read, that is called a strong consistent read. All right, and in that case you will definitely get the updated data. And one RCU represent one strongly consistent read per second, or two eventually consistent read per second up to 4 KB in size. Right, so we have covered above as well, because if you have to see the WCU write capacity unit, then we have to consider 1 KB. In the read, in 1 second we can like, while writing we can only write 1 KB of data. One WCU can 1 KB of data per second, but in while reading we can read up to 4 KB, 4 KB per item. All right, so that's why like here uh, total size is 70. So 1 KB for one WCU, for 70 KB for 70 WCU required. So C and D rejected, and now option A and B left. So now let's see. So we have 7 KB in data and 3 items per second, and it is strongly consistent. So is what is the strongly consistent? Uh, Only one strongly consistent read per second, or two eventually. Okay. So how many KB? 7 3 are 21. All right. So 7 3 are 21 KB. but in 1 second you can read 4 KB data. So 21 divided by 4, how many? 21 divided by 4, 5.25. So the round figure is 6 read capacity unit. So answer is B. If it is mentioned strongly consistent, sorry, eventually consistent, then you will divide further by 2. Then maybe you will get 3. Okay, because in the eventually consistent, we can see 2 eventually consistent reads per second. All right. Okay, so let's go to the next question. So this question may or may not be appearing to the exam, but if it appear, you should know um, how you need to resolve. So next question: a company needs to ingest terabytes of data each hour from thousands of sources that are delivered almost continually throughout the day. The volume of message generated varies over the course of the data. Message must be delivered in real time. So trying to find some keywords, some questions maybe you don't know, but if you trying to extract the keywords now, you will able to get the answer. So message must be delivered in real time for fraud detection, right? What which approach you will follow? Send the message to the SQS queue? No, SQS queue is just for the decoupling. Use the Amazon S3 API, totally wrong. Use a data pipeline, no. Kinesis data stream, totally correct, because Kinesis data stream is the stream where you can store the data in the real time, and you can adjust from the multiple sources as well. So D is the correct answer. A developer is debugging an AWS Lambda function behind an Amazon API gateway. So you have the Amazon API gateway and after that Lambda function. Whenever the API gateway is called, HTTP status code 200 is written, even though Lambda is getting error. So what should you do so that you will get the proper return code? So you have to enable course. No, so course is for the cross origin resource sharing, generally in S3. So wrong. Use the Lambda proxy integration, correct. Enable API gateway error pass through, wrong. uh, X Amazon error type, wrong. So X Amazon, this for the header, so header error type, no, but we want to return the error which is uh, generated from the Lambda. So if you enable the Lambda proxy integration in within the Amazon API gateway, we already have this, we already done this practical, so you can watch this video. If you enable the Lambda proxy integration, then when you write the Lambda, you have to return the Lambda. When you return the the function, you have to pass the status code as well. So as soon as you pass the status code, so here is a Lambda proxy integration, that status code you pass to the API gateway, and you can able to see the particular status code which the Lambda is throwing rather than the default. So B is the correct answer. For a development using code deploy, what is the run order of the hooks? So there are so many hooks. As an example, before install, after install, validate, application start. All right, so there are so many hooks. So what is the correct sequence? So if you see, mm, let's try to eliminate. If you go to the last two option, they said before install then application stop. So totally wrong, because first we need to stop the application and then we need to install, that, right? And then we need to application start and then validate service. So you can't validate the service without starting. So C and D wrong. Let's see A and B. They said once the application has been started, then install the software. That is totally wrong, because application has been started already. People are already trying to access your application, and now software is not there. So totally wrong. So you have to stop your application uh, before install, that is whatever the pre-requirement, and then after install, then start your application. So B is the correct answer. A developer is using Amazon S3 as an event source that invokes a Lambda function when new objects are created. Okay, the event source mapping information is stored in the bucket notification configuration. The developer is working with different versions of the Lambda function, and a constant need to be update notification configuration S3 to invoke the correct version. Okay, so what is being said is, so S3 and Lambda 2 services are being used. Whenever something is going to put into S3, the lambda is getting triggered. So there should be some event source mapping on the S3. So when you do the event source mapping, you have to tell which lambda has to be triggered. So they said there are multiple versions of the lambda. So if you have to test some another version of lambda, you have to update the bucket notification, because now you have to point to the correct version. How you can like effectively do this? Use a different lambda trigger wrong, use a lambda environment variable wrong, use a lambda tags wrong, use a lambda alias correct. So better whenever you are going to deploy to the new version, or do any changes, point to that alias, and that particular alias can be mapped into the S3 event source mapping. So C is the correct answer. A company has a multi-tier application that uses Amazon API gateway. So Amazon API gateway, then AWS Lambda, then Lambda trying to access the RDS. Okay. The company wants to investigate slow response. So whenever you could see multiple application and you want to check the performance, so immediately, even without looking the options, uh, X-ray, which is the AWS service, should come into your mind. What is the most operational or efficient way to determine the causing the slow response line? Amazon CloudWatch are wrong. You can just see the logs. You can't see which service, because there are multiple service involved. Which service is getting slow? X-ray, because if you are multiple service, you can figure it out. Okay, which service is slow? CloudTrail, no. CloudTrail is just for like auditing purpose. Okay, which API has been called? Who code that API? VPC flow is just to check uh, who entered the VPC or who left the VPC. That is the VPC. So X-ray is the correct answer. B is the correct answer. So that's it. That's the end of the video. And thank you. In the next video, we are going to cover the next 10 questions.